So let's take a look at a more complicated example of using an enumeration in Java. So in this case, we are going to examine some of the class properties of an enumeration. We're basically going to use an enumeration like a class in order to basically couple some data with the enumeration. So if you look at our example here, we had create our color cartridge, and we have a color cartridge that's of type blue. We had created a switch statement before in our first example, and that switch statement was basically mapping some text to the type. So for blue, we had the text blue. For red, we had the text red. And really what we were having to do was have this switch statement in our main method here, and it really belongs with the enumeration. And in a lot of programming languages, you can't put that data together. You have to have a map somewhere else, a switch statement in our code like we did, or some way of associating the enumeration with the data that belongs with that enumeration. And so that really becomes difficult to do because it's hard to identify from the enumeration where the data that goes with it goes. And so a class, if you remember, really is a way that you can assign data and methods together. And so we're going to go ahead and emulate that with an enumeration. So I'm going to go into our color cartridge class, and we're going to change this so that the text that's going to be printed for the cartridge is going to be associated with the cartridge itself. So in our color cartridge, we have these types, and we can actually add a constructor to an enumeration. So I'll do this by using a private constructor. Enumeration constructors have to be private because you can't call them from outside. Otherwise, you'd be able to create more types. So we'll do color cartridge, and then we'll have it take in a string that's going to be the color text. And we can use a shortcut here in Eclipse. If I hold Control and hit 1, it's going to make this kind of auto suggestion feature come up. And I can click Assign Parameter to New Field here, and you can see it saved me quite a bit of typing. What it did was it saw that I was using constructor, so it took this constructor parameter and it made a variable for it and assigned it. It makes it real easy to add constructors or add variables to constructors. So now you can see that it's caused all of my enumeration types to have a problem. And the problem is that now that we have this constructor defined, they need to call this constructor. And the way you make them call a constructor is you basically just do the call right after the declaration. So in this case, for red, we can put in red. For blue, we can put in blue, and so on. So now you can see we are actually associating this data with the enumerated type, and it's going to be stored in that enumeration, and we can actually access that data. So for example, we're going to make a method on this enumeration that's going to allow us to return back the text of the color. So I'm going to go ahead and put this method though on our iCartridge interface so that we can use it in our printer class. So I'm going to make a public method that returns a string called print color. And you can see that we'll have to implement this on our color cartridge. I'm going to hit Control 1 again in Eclipse in order to get this automatic assistant to show up. And then I'm going to hit add unimplemented methods, and it already creates this stub for me, saves me some time. Now in this print color, we're just going to simply return the color text. So what this will do is, for the red instance, if we had a red color cartridge, it's going to return the text red. For blue, it'll return blue, and so forth. And we could have actually added more things to this constructor if we wanted to. Whatever data we want associated with the enumeration, we can associate right here because enumeration is a full-fledged class in Java. And we can have methods, just like we have here, that can be called on the enumerated type, which is, again, a lot different than a lot of programming languages like C++, C, or C#, where an enumeration really does not have the ability to have methods or any data associated with it. And for black and white cartridge, we'll need to implement a method also. Since we're not really going to use it in this example, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as a default. So now let's take a look at how we can actually use this. So in our printer class, you remember we have this print method that we've been using to print copies quite a bit here. And we had modified this to be able to add a page number to the text to print. But let's do one more thing. Let's make our text to print also add to it the color from the cartridge. So I'm going to do text to print plus equal, and we're going to add basically what is in the cartridge. So I'm going to kind of format this so that we have a couple of bars here, and then we're going to do cartridge dot print color, and then we'll add a couple more bars here. So this is going to print before our message. We're adding this to our text to print. Let's make sure this is named correctly. So we'll call this text to print. So what's going to happen here now is it's going to print this. It's going to add the color of the cartridge before the page, before it prints it. So let's take a look at how this will work here. So in our example, we're going to call printer.loadPaper. We'll load 5 pages. We'll call printer.print, and we'll print 3 copies. And then we'll call printer.outputPage, and let's output page number 2 and see what happens here. So I'll run this, and you can see here we got my printer is on, and then we got blue, and then we got our page number. So based on the enumeration, it was able to figure out which text to print. So if we change this to red, then you can see it's now printing red. So this is a really useful thing. Let's take a look one more time at what we have done here. So we went into color cartridge, and in color cartridge we've associated this enumeration with some data. And this is a really important concept in Java programming. A lot of Java developers fail to realize that enumerations are so powerful, and they end up trying to basically map enumerations to data and creating all these messy data structures when you can put the data right into the enumeration. And we can call methods on that enumeration. The other thing that we can do here, I want to show you real quick, is that we can iterate through an enumerated type. So let's take a look at how to iterate through an enumerated type. I'll go ahead and comment out this code here, and we're just going to loop through each one of the print cartridges, each one of the types. So we can just use a for loop here. So I can do for, and then I'll do color cartridge, and we'll call this cartridge in, and we can do color cartridge dot values. And this values method returns each value of the enumeration. So this will let us get through every single value that is possible for a color cartridge. And we'll just do a system.out.println, and we're just going to print the cartridge.print color. So that should give us every single color of all the cartridges that exist. And you can see now that we've gotten every single color. So really useful things to remember about enumerations in Java. They can be treated as classes, you can create constructors, you can associate data with them, and you can iterate through them very easily. So let's go over what we covered in this module. First, we broke down an enumeration. We talked about what an enumeration exactly is, why you would use it, and some places that enumerations could be useful and how they could be useful to you as a Java programmer. Then we went through and created a simple example in our code base of using an enumeration. We saw how you can declare an enumeration and use that enumeration to really simplify your code and make it a lot more readable. Then we talked about this important concept in Java that enumerations are classes. They're full-fledged classes, and you can use them as such. And we talked about the idea of using an enumeration as a simple singleton in Java. Finally, we went through another example, and I showed you how to use an enumeration in a full class capacity. We went through an example of creating an enumeration that acted as a class that had a constructor, and we saw how that could be really useful in our Java code. Well, I hope that you'll start using enumerations in your Java programming. It's really, I think, an underused feature because a lot of people don't realize how powerful enumerations are. So I wanted to make sure that I included a module in this course about enumerations because I really feel that they can help you to make your code a lot more readable and to also make your code a lot more cohesive, because an enumeration has that ability to bind the methods and the data that operate on that enumeration together with the enumeration